talk about the facts in my case. I really try to avoid it, but I know talking about it, it helps me process it and move on little by little each day that I'm able to do it.
How about for you, Maya? How different was the married life you imagined compared to the married life that you were living with Jonathan?
I learned walking with Jonathan and walking with God. You know, our faith and our relationship with God is the foundation of everything that we do. And I feel like the Lord showed me I was hoping for things with kind of more of a narrow vision of how I would want it to unfold when more mysterious vision. And so I started to approach this journey with more of an open hand and an open mind of what life is and how it happens. And I think it's been very helpful because it has been hard. There's layers of my life of transitioning from being a player to a, not playing, and then transitioning as being a friend to Jonathan, coming home, and then the dynamic of being married and then becoming parents. Like, that's a whole lot of life shift and life change all happening within the course of a couple of years. And I think walking away from the game, restructuring my life to create space was just so crucial. Like, one of the biggest things that I've learned and is a centerpiece for our family is margin. Margin. Leave yourself a margin to be human. Because there's gonna be unexpected things that you gotta give your attention to if you want to be well. So that's where we're at with just trying to cultivate home and trying to heal. Because healing is, it's gonna be this lifelong process, right? So we're trying to do that.
Well, I wish the both of you, the three of you, just have the best. Maya and Jonathan Irons, they tell their story in a new book called Love and Justice, the story of triumph on two different courts. Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Yes.
This is NPR News.
You're listening to WAMU 88.5. Coming up, there's a connection between unfilled jobs and Trump-era immigration changes. You're going to look at how policy at the border affects the Fed's approach to a cooling labor market. That's next hour in Market. And then tomorrow,
Dr. Henry Marsh's cancer diagnosis turned out to be instructive in ways he didn't anticipate.
The future doesn't exist. I've made lots of mistakes. But at the moment, today, the sun is shining. I'm very well.
That conversation with the renowned neurosurgeon and all the latest news, Saturday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
listen tomorrow from 8 to 11 on WAMU.
Support for WAMU comes from George Washington University Hospital and the GW Transplant Institute, providing comprehensive, compassionate kidney and liver transplants. More at gwhospital.com or 1-888-4GW-DOCS.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. Before they won Eurovision, before they had the #1 song on Spotify, the members of the band Måneskin were teenagers busking on the streets of Rome.
When you go there, you put the amplifier down and you take your instrument and you start seeing people look at you like, why?
First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. The White House has intelligence showing that North Korea has been providing military arms and ammunition to Russian mercenaries known as the Wagner Group for months now. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says surveillance video shows rail cars moving between Russia and North Korea, picking up and transferring materials.
We continue to assess that Wagner currently has approximately 50,000 personnel deployed to Ukraine, including 10,000 contractors and 40,000 convicts. Our information indicates the Russian Defense Ministry has reservations about Wagner's recruitment methods. Despite this, we assess that it is likely that Wagner will continue to recruit right out of Russian prisons.
Kirby says despite the assistance from the paramilitary group, nothing has really changed on the battlefield in Ukraine. Ahead of this weekend's 50th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision, the Public Services Secretary is reinforcing the Biden administration's support for
Secretary Javier Becerra visited health officials in Minnesota, where abortion remains legal, and immediately emailed care providers who say the 174-year-old Wisconsin law that took effect after last summer's Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade deters them from offering full reproductive health care options. Becerra says the contrast is jarring.
It's a deal of two cities. It's in the worst way.
Republicans control return protections on the ballots ruling for NPR News.
Stocks finished higher on Wall Street. This is NPR.
Live from WAMU, I'm Tamika Smith. It's about 50 degrees and mostly cloudy in the Washington metro region at 5:32. You'll hear more about the weather forecast in just a minute, but first in regional news, the District of Columbia has more highly efficient buildings than most states. WAMU's environment reporter Jacob Fenston has more.
Tiny little DC, just 68 square miles, certified more green buildings than all but 3 states in 2022. And when you compare by population, DC added more green square footage per capita than any state by a factor of 10. Peter Templeton is president of the U.S. Green Building Council.
Washington, D.C. is outpacing the rest of the U.S. in part because of the federal government's presence, but also the commitment to green building at the local level.
The number of green buildings in the city will keep growing, especially in light of a recent law that requires new buildings to be net zero starting in 2026. Those buildings produce as much energy as they consume. Maryland and Virginia also made the top 10 green building list at number 5 and number 8, respectively. For WAMU, I'm Jacob Fenston.
All right, let's take a look at that weather forecast for you with Ian Livingston.
It's a blustery one behind the front. Temperatures may still try for the upper 40s to around 50, but wind chills are lower than that. A few gusts around 40 to 45 miles per hour are a good bet. If out on the water or heading to the mountains, do take care for even stronger winds. Seasonally chilly and clear tonight. Lows range from near 30 to the mid-30s. Breezes will stay up, leading to wind chills in the 20s. Sunny and less wind Saturday. Highs are pretty close to average, mainly in the mid and upper 40s. A few Sunday morning showers turn to a steadier rain as low pressure passes by. It'll be raw, but it should be all wet, except maybe a little mixed to start. Highs are in the low and mid 40s. For the Capital Weather Gang, I'm Ian Livingston.
Thanks, Ian.
Even before the pandemic, small colleges were at risk.
It is a significant problem, and Moody is citing that, we're going to see about 15 school closings per year going forward.
Since then, more than 1 million fewer students have enrolled. So, should small colleges rethink what they offer? And can they survive? I'm Anthony Brooks. Challenging times for small colleges. That's on the next On Point.
Listen tonight from 10 to 11 on WAMU 88.5. Support for NPR comes from this station and from Fox with the new crime anthology series Accused. Every week a new case, a different defendant, and an unpredictable story designed to keep viewers guessing. Accused, series premiere Sunday on Fox. And from Noom, providing an online evaluation and the tools to help people lead healthier lives through behavior change. More information at Noom, NOOM.com. And from the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California.
And I'm Ari Shapiro in Washington. People across California are cleaning up wreckage and debris after 9 atmospheric rivers drenched the state in just 3 weeks. President Biden surveyed some of that damage outside Santa Cruz yesterday.
We know some of the destruction is going to take years to fully recover and rebuild. But we got to not just rebuild, we got to rebuild better. We got to rebuild better.
Deanne Criswell heads the Federal Emergency Management Agency and was with the president yesterday. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Ari. Thanks for having me on today.
Will you just begin by describing what you saw with the president?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity actually to go visit the area the weekend before, and I visited Merced County as well as Santa Cruz County. And really there's just a wide variety of different impacts across the state of California, from agricultural impacts to small businesses that have been destroyed, homeowners and schools that have been closed. And so we're really seeing, quite a diversity in the types of people that have been impacted and the types of damage as a result of these, as you said, 9 atmospheric rivers that have gone through California.
When the damage is that geographically spread out and takes so many different forms, from hitting agriculture to homes to businesses to schools, how do you even begin to mobilize a response?
We work really closely with the state of California. California has a lot of capability, and we've been working side by side with them even before the president made the disaster declaration. We've had teams that have been embedded in the state operations center so we could understand what their potential needs would be, which allowed us to pre-stage some of our commodities as well as some of our other resources. And now we're working with them to assess the damage and just going county by county to see what those impacts are. There's been a lot of even landslides, and so some parts of the state are not even accessible yet.
The president said 500 FEMA employees are in the state right now with food, water, tens of thousands of blankets and cots. Do you have a sense of how much aid has been distributed so far?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, we had just over $500,000 that has gone out to individuals to help them start their repair process. That number is going to continue to go up, especially as we added more counties and we continue to do assessments. That's just for the individuals themselves. I expect the numbers to be in the hundreds of millions for the public infrastructure damage that we're seeing, as well as some of the agricultural damage.
As we were talking about California, parts of Alabama and Georgia are also recovering from major storms that battered communities in the south. How is FEMA helping out there?
Yeah, it was really quite the weekend where the president had 3 major disaster declarations within 2 days, right? California, Alabama, and Georgia. We have staff on the ground in both of those areas, in Alabama and Georgia. Over 100 personnel in each of the states. We already have people that are registered for assistance, and we're going to continue to do the same thing that we're doing in California. We're going to work with our state officials, our state partners, to assess the total impact of the damages, and then make sure that we're working together, bringing in the right federal partners to get them on their road to recovery.
3 major disaster declarations in 2 days. As disasters like this become more frequent and more intense, do you think the FEMA model still works, or does the system of emergency relief need to adapt to a warming planet, to a changing climate?
I think that where we are at, we are going to continue to respond, but we have to break away from this emergency management model that's really focused on response and then recover and then repeat. And we have to put a lot of our efforts in the mitigation side, right? It's part of the emergency management foundation. It's what we do. And that's, looking at the future, not just the historical impacts from the types of weather events we've seen in the past, because we can see from this, they're changing.
You talk about mitigation. What exactly does that mean?
Mitigation are those measures that we can put in place to reduce the impacts from weather events, right? So it could be as simple as putting in and increasing the resiliency of levee systems to protect communities. And we want to work with those communities so they better understand what they can do, what threats they're facing, to put the measures in place to reduce those impacts.
FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Ari. Thank you.
And now for the latest on that computer system outage last week that temporarily grounded all airline flights nationwide. Well, the Federal Aviation Administration says its investigation finds that contract employees inadvertently deleted files while working on the system. The FAA says the mishap was unintentional, but many in the aviation industry say the incident exposes broader problems with the FAA's aging technology. NPR's David Schaefer reports.
The FAA says its review of last week's system outage determined that contract personnel unintentionally deleted files while trying to fix problems with a database. In a statement, the agency says it has found no evidence of a cyber attack or malicious intent, adding that the FAA made the necessary repairs to the system and has taken steps to make the NOTAM system more resilient. NOTAM stands for Notices to Air Missions. They're critical messages alerting pilots to potential hazards along their flight path. The system failure led the FAA to impose a ground stop on all departing flights last Wednesday morning. It was the first nationwide ground stop since September 11, 2001. And even though it lasted about 90 minutes, the incident forced airlines to cancel more than 1,300 flights that day and delayed more than 11,000 more. And many in the aviation industry say the computer failure highlights how much of the FAA's infrastructure is overtaxed and out of date.
I think this ought to be a wake-up call for all of us in aviation, something that many of us in aviation have been saying for a long time, that the FAA needs more resources.
That's United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby on a conference call with reporters and analysts Wednesday.
The hard facts are the FAA's budget in real terms is lower than it was 20 years ago. But the amount of work that they've been asked to do is significantly higher. And so they've had to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Kirby and other airline industry leaders are calling on Congress and the White House to better fund and support the FAA. The computer failure is not only drawing attention to the FAA's aging technology and infrastructure, but to NOTAMs themselves and how the notices are distributed and formatted.
Fortunately, they really date back to the early 1900s.
Mark Z is a former European airline pilot and air traffic controller. He says NOTAMs are confusingly typed out in all caps and full of jargony acronyms and abbreviations.
It's a mess. And it's a great word to describe it. It's a mess. It's a giant mess.
And Z says pilots have to review hundreds of the messages before each flight when only 2 or 3 might be truly relevant. He and others in the industry are working with aviation authorities around the world to reform the NOTAM system. David Schaefer, NPR News.